Well, that was fun. The Baltimore Ravens, they demolished the Cleveland Browns in week number 2. We dive into an instant reaction of the game and so much more coming up on this instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everybody again for tuning in today and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. And also thank you out there to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners. If you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. Really fun show today as we just came off of the Ravens absolutely blowing out the Cleveland Browns, 41-17, the final score. And man, there was a lot to take away. So we're going to dive into what happened offensively, because I know it was a little bit of a rough one for the offense at times, and honestly for the majority of it. Defensively, though, absolutely incredible. We'll dive into that. And of course, Roquan Smith, his coming out party for the season was certainly today. And then we'll dive into special teams, what comes next for the Ravens. So again, appreciate everybody for being here. We're a 5-day-a-week plus more daily Ravens podcast. And I want to remind everyone again that today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. Man, I think that there is plenty to like when you talk about this Ravens win. Not necessarily like all good as you hear the race car, or at least what feels like a race car, right on by there. That's what the Ravens are doing. They were zooming past the Browns in this game. And I loved it. I love the fact that Baltimore was able to establish dominance defensively. And then that ends up, in my opinion, kind of setting the tone for the majority of the rest of the game. And that's really big to me because obviously after the defensive performance we saw in week 1, you wanted to see just a better group effort from them, secondary wise, pass rush wise. And look, I think we saw that today. So in my opinion, there's just so much to dive into. And actually I see the pictures now that are circulating on social media of, look at the love. If you haven't seen them, if you're listening or watching this after the fact, you can see the love between Lamar Jackson and Joe Flacco in these exchanges after the game. And, there was a lot of conversation about Lamar and Joe and that storyline and Joe coming back to Baltimore. It just, Lamar and Joe talked glowingly about each other over the entire course of the week. Obviously, Lamar's the one that came out on top in this game and, pretty rightfully so. But I still think that Joe has a special place in Baltimore. And, it's just he was not rooting, but he was playing for the other team in this one. But Joe's a Baltimore legend, and we all know that. Now, the Ravens defense, they made Joe look pretty pedestrian in this game. In fact, worse than pedestrian, in my opinion. 25 of 45 for Joe in the game, 199 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. This defense was suffocating for the entire course of the game, right? The entire course of the game. You could just see it. And when the Ravens offense was struggling, the defense, they kept them in, and special teams too. Jake Hummel, that blocked punt set the tone, I think. It took a little while for them to establish everything, but, in my opinion, Baltimore was able to get the job done in that game, largely due to the fact that they didn't let the offense dictate early what it meant, right? The offense in this game could have dictated a lot. The sluggish start, the 3 and outs, the missed opportunities. But in my opinion, it was the defense that set the tone here. Obviously, Roquan Smith is the name that we're going to be talking about, though. That is the guy here. 15 tackles in this game, 9 of them solo. He had 3 tackles for loss, 2 quarterback hits. He had the scoop and score on that Tavius Robinson forced fumble, which we'll get into. This was the biggest bounce back game that you could have imagined from Roquan Smith. And I give him all the credit in the world, right? There was a clip, Kadri Ismail and I were talking about him, and we were wondering last week where Roquan was at. Where was the player they traded for? this was the player that the Ravens traded for. This was the guy that everybody was so excited about when the Ravens traded for him from Chicago, right? He was one of the main reasons why the Ravens stuck in this game, why the Ravens were able to continue to be in this game, and why the Ravens were able to pull away at the end. So I think the big idea here for the Ravens is you have a lot to build on here. You have a lot to build on here. I think that starts on the defensive side of the ball, where, look, the Browns offense not nearly as good as what the Bills offense brought to the table, right? But I think we all know that the Ravens defense was better than the showing they put out there in week 1 against the Bills. And I think we saw it here, led by Roquan Smith. Malachi Starks was next on the team with 7 tackles in this game. Only 2 sacks on Joe Flacco, one by Tavius, the strip sack that I was talking about, the other by Nnamdi Madubuike. But they were still generating pressure, and Joe honestly looked a lot more agile than I thought he would. I didn't necessarily expect him to go out there and make some of the plays he did. And even that's just like moving out of the pocket and throwing the ball at a guy's foot. Like, I thought that Joe's going to be a lot more immobile than he was, but it was the classic case of check down Joe, right? Check down Joe, where he was just throwing the ball to the running backs. How many receptions did Quinshon Judkins have in this game? He had 3. Sampson had 3. Jerome Ford had 5. So that's 11 catches to running backs just alone. You had the ones to Njoku and Fannin. No Browns receiver went over 51 yards in that game, and that, funny enough, was Jerry Jeudy. So, there's a lot to like there when it comes to the Ravens. And yeah, Lamar Jackson, he had apparently there was a bandage on his left arm. He gets an IV after every game. So that's kind of where that was. But look, in my opinion, Lamar, he said the defense looked mature today, right? That he looked Lamar with the clapback statement on the defense in a good way, obviously, which is funny. But, there was so much to like. And look, offensively, I get that it wasn't, it wasn't the game that everybody necessarily wanted from the offense. I mean, Derrick Henry, and look, credit to Grant Delpit and that Browns defense. Jerry Jeudy, not necessarily the game that you wanted if you were him making those comments about the Ravens secondary. But look, you also have the Browns defense limiting Derrick Henry to 11 carries for 24 yards in this game, just 2.2 yards per carry. Henry could get nothing. Now, that sequence in the first half where Derrick Henry, I think it was that sequence in the game where the Ravens could only come away with a field goal after getting the ball down to the 1. It was down that DeAndre Hopkins catch, right? They called it a touchdown. It gets reversed. 31-yard line. Actually, it was the beginning of the third quarter, excuse me. But that sequence, not giving the ball to Derrick Henry, I thought was malpractice. I get it was only one play. I get there was a false start on the next play. I thought they got too cute. You're at the half-yard line, give the ball to Derrick Henry. He can get stopped, and you can throw the ball on second down. I thought they got too cute on that play. And again, it didn't necessarily matter because the Ravens won the game and they won it by a lot. But, those are the types of things. What if it happens late in the game, right? That, to me, is difficult, right? You need to be able to convert on those opportunities. And again, like, am I complaining about 41 points? No, absolutely not. Like, it ended up being a really, really good game. But in this game, you look at the red zone stats for both teams. The Ravens, they were good at the end. They went 3 for 4. Would have been 2 for 4 if they decided not to go for it on that 4th down, which I know that was a conversation point for a lot of different people in this game. So, I think at this point, there's stuff you can still improve on. And I think that's the really big thing here, where you can definitely still improve on certain little things. But to me, this was a big bounce back win, and honestly sets the tone for the season, right? If they had started the year 0-2 again, and it was a tough loss to a team you were supposed to win against, and that would have been bad. Would have been bad. But now you can hang your hat on something good as you head into week 3 against a Detroit team that absolutely took it to the Chicago Bears today. That Detroit team is dominant, right? I know week 1, a lot of people were feeling a certain type of way. That Detroit team is still really, really good. They have a lot of talent, much more talent than the Browns do on the offensive side of the ball. And, you look at how the Ravens defense played this game, just in general, just some stats, some team stats. you look at it, and the Ravens held the Browns, and the Browns had a lot more third down opportunities. The Ravens were not particularly good on third down in this game either. 3 of 12 on third down, 7 of 18 on third down for the Browns, which is under 50% and a decent bit under. You will take that. But I thought that where the Ravens really, and it was interesting, yards per rush, it was 5.2 for the Browns, but I think that that's a little deceiving because Quidshot Judkins had a 31-yard run in this game late against the backups. You also had Joe Flacco, who had an 8-yard run, which, that was crazy in itself. And that was actually a penalty that wasn't called a penalty. But the Browns running backs, Dylan Sampson, 4 for 6. Jerome Ford, 6 for 30, which he had a big run of 8 yards and was, I guess, churning off a little bit more. I thought they were better than the stats ended up showing in the run defense job or in the run defense category, but still stuff that you can build on and improve upon. Now, I'm curious. I don't think that John Harbaugh gave any updates on Kyle Van Noy and Marlon Humphrey. Both of those guys left the game. Van Noy with a hamstring and then Marlon Humphrey with a groin. So, I think what Harbaugh said they're good is in my reading. I'm not sure. I can't see the exact quote from Harbaugh right now as we're recording live, but I think, in my opinion, the Ravens are in a good spot right now. They're in a good spot, and you have to be able to build on that momentum heading into week number 2. So, nobody had a season-ending injury is what John Harbaugh said. So it was Marlon Humphrey, Rasheen Ali, and Kyle Van Noy all left the game early. They'll all be looked at tomorrow. So I'm loving it. I'm loving this win. I love how the defense set the tone and the offense kind of followed suit after. Coming up, we'll get into Tez Walker a little bit. We'll get into DeAndre Hopkins, some of those Ravens receivers making noise. And hey, guess what? Zay Flowers, hey, that guy's still pretty good. Still pretty good. So be sure to stay tuned. We got so much coming your way on this instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by DoorDash, and it's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who's Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For the Ravens, look, I'm saying Roquan Smith delivered in a big way. He absolutely did with the 15 tackles he had, the scoop and score in the fourth quarter. When the pressure was on, he came through. And there was a lot of pressure on Roquan this week after the game that he had against Buffalo, some of the games he's had in the past against other teams in big spots. But look, Roquan, he did come through. No hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, this performance from Roquan, it was not a fluke. He's been a good player for a long time, just in certain spots. I think it can be rough. Roquan Smith, he was on a streak. Just like Roquan Smith delivered for the Ravens, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through 11/18. And the show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel's making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet, player props, building the same game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. Makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. And we were talking about it here on Locked On Ravens. The Ravens were 11.5-point favorites at home against the Browns. Now, you're probably living large if you ended up making that as part of your Sunday, as the Ravens absolutely demolished the Browns 41-17. So we're ready to play. Down the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Moving along on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher instantly reacting to the Baltimore Ravens' big week number 2 win over the Cleveland Browns, dominant fashion, 41-17. Appreciate everybody for being here today. We had a great watch along. We just came from that watch along. For those that don't know about the watch alongs, we do watch alongs every single game. We react live to every single play. It's a fun time, great community over there. And we have a great community in general here on Locked On Ravens, as we're 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Regular Locked On Ravens show Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. We also have the watch-alongs, instant reaction shows like this one. We got the Locked On Ravens squad show twice a week. That'll actually be happening after this show. Be sure you check that out. We got bonus episodes. If you want daily Ravens coverage, we are here for you. So hit the like and subscribe button in video form. Follow along in audio form. Let's keep talking, though, about this Ravens team, about this Ravens win. And, man, I just saw live here, the Cowboys won. Brandon Aubrey on an overtime field goal. But back to the Ravens game. First of all, tell me where you're tuning in from. Where's everybody tuning in from? If you're live, if you're in the comments after the fact, be sure you tell me where you're tuning in from. We have so many great people watching from so many great places. So if you want to drop where you're tuning in from, would appreciate that. Man, the Ravens, though, here's what I want to talk about. Let's give the wide receivers some love. Let's do it. Zay Flowers, DeAndre Hopkins, Tez Walker. Storylines of the day. Zay was all over the place. 11 targets for Zay in this game after having, 9 of them in the first game, if I'm not mistaken. 11 targets, 7 catches for 75 yards in this one. He didn't score a touchdown. You want to know who did score a touchdown? Tez Walker scored 2 touchdowns, 2 for 26 and 2 touchdowns. Why is that important? Well, Tez Walker has 3 career catches. All 3 of them are for touchdowns. Now, if you remember, Eric DaCosta said that he saw similarities between Tez Walker and Torrey Smith. You want to know what Torrey Smith did? His first 3 catches in the NFL, all for touchdowns. All for touchdowns. So it's crazy how life works sometimes, crazy how sports work sometimes, but all Tez knows how to do is score touchdowns. And that is absolutely unbelievable. And especially with the fact that the Torrey comparison is right there. Man, that is unreal. Now, it wasn't just Tez. DeAndre Hopkins washed who? DeAndre Hopkins is not washed, everybody. We know that, and we know it because he keeps coming up with big plays. He had a catch from Lamar Jackson down the side. It was actually 2 catches from Lamar down the sideline. Both of them incredible catches. One was marked, obviously, right down by the 1-yard line, and the Ravens end up not being able to score on that play, at least a touchdown, which was disappointing. But then the second one, perfectly placed throw from Lamar, perfectly placed catch by DeAndre, perfectly made, I guess, catch by DeAndre Hopkins. This is what you brought DeAndre in to do. And this is my opinion on the whole Tez Walker, DeAndre Hopkins, who's wide receiver 3. It's not Tez right now, obviously, but this is the perfect succession plan, in my opinion, right? You get DeAndre Hopkins in there on plays, make an impact. He can go out there, make his plays, be a vet. And then you bring it back to Tez Walker next season, full-time wide receiver 3. That is the absolute ideal way that this goes, in my opinion. This is the way to do it. This is the absolute way to do it. And I just think that for a team that has been trying to develop wide receivers for so long, and they finally started to do it with Zay Flowers and with Rashad Bateman, having Tez be that guy for them next season and continue to build off the momentum he has this year, that would be unbelievable. That'd be unbelievable. And British Raven, yeah, look at this. I tweeted out, and I do this a lot, actually, is I tweet out the Baltimore Ravens have entered the 4th quarter. And a lot of people are like, all right, I'm nervous. And I was nervous too. I was like, all right, you have a lead. Can you hold the lead? And luckily the defense did. The offense obviously kept their foot on the gas as well. We saw some Cooper Rush time and only kneel outs, right? But even still, really good. And what's up, Duran? Appreciate you checking in. And I want to read off quickly. We'll do it at the beginning of the 3rd segment where some people are from. I see Orlando got put in here in the chat as well. But we'll read off somewhere everybody's from as we get into the final part of the show. But I want to also talk about a little bit of what the Ravens did on special teams, because I would be remiss if I did not mention the special teams unit in this game today. Special teams played a huge role in this game, right? Huge. The Jake Hummel blocked punt, I think, turned the tides in this game. I think they absolutely turned the tides with that play. The offense was struggling. It gave them a short field, and they were able to put a touchdown on the board. Now, did that mean the offense had a ton of success after that? I mean, no, they didn't. They had to kind of fight and claw, and the defense put them in good spots. Defense scored 6, right? Like, you probably attribute 21 points in this game to defense and special teams, right? But even so, you're setting your offense up with good field position, and you're letting them get a gimme, essentially, a gimme. And you see LeJontay Wester have a big punt return that he was, oh man, it was so close. It was so close. This is why the Ravens value special teams so much. And look, they had their struggles on special teams as well. There was a punt from Jordan Stout that wasn't good, although I thought Jordan played pretty well the majority of the game. Tyler Loop has been struggling with some of the kickoffs, and hopefully he'll get that right because he can't put the can't put the opposing offense in good spots like that. Now, look, as a kicker, he's been nails. Like, he's been unbelievable as a kicker for them. Straight shots down the middle, and he only has the one missed extra point from last week. But I can't complain about Loop outside of the kickoffs, right? The kickoffs is something he's gonna have to get better at, but it's a learning process, and the Ravens won the game, so I guess it's no harm, no foul. But you don't want to have that continue to be a trend. Now, the thing with Derrick Henry, he had 5 yards on 5 carries, and I think they actually took a yard away from him just now as I refreshed the page. 11 carries for 23 yards is what it now says on the box score. But Lamar did his thing too, right? Lamar had a quiet 4 touchdowns. This might have been the quietest 4 touchdown performance I've seen from Lamar Jackson. Honestly, it was 19 to 29 for 225 in those 4 touchdowns. You show me this game and you say, like, you can't count stats, like, don't do anything. I'm showing you all the drive. 4 touchdowns from Lamar based off the game the offense had. It's pretty impressive, right? The offense didn't necessarily feel like Lamar had 4 touchdowns, but he did, and credit to him. And, it's unbelievable where you look at some of the other team stats in this game. I mean, the Browns actually outgained the Ravens as a whole, and that will happen as, the Ravens have been, look, the thing with the Ravens is they can be extremely efficient. And part of the reason the offense wasn't necessarily efficient today, the reason why the Browns outgained the Ravens was because the Ravens were given a lot of short fields. And when the Ravens had opportunities to drive down the field, they didn't necessarily do it a ton. It's not that they didn't do it at all, it's that they just didn't do it a ton. So, you give the ball back to the offense with the blocked punt really deep in Browns territory. Nate Wiggins' interception, he gets that down to the 6-yard line. Like, you're getting short fields there, and the Browns late in the game were picking up chunk yards on the Ravens backups. So, that was the reason why, in my opinion, the Browns outgained the Ravens. But you look at time of possession, it was decently even. Browns 31-49, Ravens 28-11. Again, the Browns kind of held the ball a lot more than the Ravens did in certain spots late in the game. And honestly, early they were holding it too, but the Ravens defense was forcing those 3 and outs at times. Again, 7 for 18 on 3rd down. The Browns went 1 of 3 on 4th down, which was really good. 45 yards rushing, and you win by almost 30 points. I guess more so, a little over 20, 24. That's really good for the Ravens. And I think also it is crazy, and I don't know, Lamar here, only 2 carries for 13 yards in the game in general, had an 11-yard run and then the 2-yard run after that. Not really a big Lamar Jackson with his legs type of game today. Wasn't really utilizing that part of his game, which is fine. I don't really necessarily care because the Ravens won the game, but just the play calling was a little suspect on offense at times in this game from Todd Monken. I think that they should absolutely just burn the side of the playbook that has all the Zay Flowers jet sweeps on them. They don't need to be doing that. All right. We don't need to be doing that. I'm just saying we don't need to be doing that, but they bounced back. And I think when you look at it, the Ravens putting up 21 points in the 4th. It was progression throughout the entire game. 3 points in the 1st quarter, 7 points in the 2nd quarter, 10 points in the 3rd quarter, and 21 points in the 4th quarter. They got rolling as the game went on. And again, the defense made their offense feel comfortable, in my opinion. Not that the offense was taking advantage of every single opportunity, but I think that the fact that the defense was able to hang the way that they were, force the Browns into tough spots and give their offense chances. Sometimes all it takes is chances, right? All it takes is opportunities. And I think defense doing that really helped out for the majority of this game. So I just, I'm excited that they were able to get this job done. And apparently Myles Garrett, yeah, he had his Achilles rolled up on. He said he's doing all right. So glad that Myles Garrett is okay. I'm excited, though. You got a big week 3 game against Detroit coming up and a lot of positives to build off of here. Particularly, look, Roquan Smith is, to me, the most exciting part of this entire thing. The fact that he looked the way that he did. Now, again, you're going to be playing against guys like Jahmyr Gibbs and Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown, who had 3 touchdowns in this game. Like, it's going to be a little different than facing a Browns team that didn't have didn't necessarily have a great offensive showing and, the Ravens defense, but that was the way they were going to win the game. And this is what I said. If you remember, if you've just been listening to the show, and I said this on the watch along too, the Ravens offense, their floor and ceiling is both higher than the Browns offense floor and ceiling, right? That's the thing. Even if the Ravens had their worst game, which this wasn't their worst game, but, it certainly was not wonderful in terms of the offense. You had a lot of opportunities for the offense to be better, and they still did not reach their full potential, not even close to their full potential in this game. And we saw them go out there and still, as a team, put up 41 points with the offense, and the rushing offense in particular not doing great. That Browns offense, their ceiling and floor is a lot lower than Baltimore. It would have taken the Browns to have their best offensive game and the Ravens to have their worst offensive game to go out there and win against the Ravens. And I think, to me, didn't happen on either side. The Ravens had a subpar offensive game, but the Browns had a bad offensive game. That was always going to be a recipe for success for Baltimore. So coming up in the final part of the show, we'll continue talking about this team, moving ahead to what's next in Detroit a little bit, and talking about some Ravens storylines that we heard this morning about the team and honestly about the Browns. It relates all back to one another. Stay tuned. We got plenty coming your way on Locked On Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by Mazda, and this episode is brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. These are moments, and there are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. And this week's moment to move the game forward, to me, Roquan Smith, it has to be Roquan. He was unbelievable. This might be the best game he's played as a Raven. He was that good in this game. Obviously, the scoop and score late in the fourth quarter, it put the Browns away, and really responded after a lot of questions from last week about his performance. And Roquan, again, this was a situation where he was just able to move forward after a rough game, keep playing his game and doing what he knows he can do. And that outlook, positive from Roquan, and it's what keeps him, the team, and the fan base moving forward is games like this one and moments like that from Roquan Smith. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still talking with you here after the Ravens beat up on the Browns in week number 2, 41-17. The Roquan Smith legacy game, as some people are calling it, and that somebody is me. I am some people, because Roquan Smith, I cannot stop talking about how good he was in this game. Appreciate everybody for being here again. Locked On Ravens is 5 days a week for you. Daily Ravens podcast. That's our regular show, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. But of course, we also do have episodes like these, the instant reaction episodes after games. We have the Locked On Ravens watch alongs, where you can tune in, watch the game live with me, and react to every single play. We have the Locked On Ravens squad show, which is coming up right after this with myself, Sam Njoku, and former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail. We have bonus episodes. We have daily Ravens coverage for you each and every single day. So be sure to hit the like, subscribe button in video form, follow along in audio form, and tell a friend, tell a family member. You can also follow me on social media at CashRecord34, Twitter, Instagram, as well as TikTok. So lovely game for the Ravens. Lovely game. Now, in my opinion, Taurus, I see him. I see you. Some people, I get it. Roquan, he had a really, and look, we'll talk about Myles Garrett varsity in a second, but Roquan, I know it's something with him where he just doesn't play up to his potential at times. And it's disappointing, because we know how good of a player Roquan can be, right? And so 1 week of Roquan playing like this season, right? It's been one good Roquan game, one not so good Roquan game so far this year. I want to appreciate Roquan for this game, though. Right? I just want to give him his flowers. I want to appreciate Roquan. So, man, look, great game from him. And, I feel like at this point, what you have in this team is a team that knows it has talent and has potential, and they feel good and confident in themselves now, as they should. But you have a tough team in Detroit coming to your house in week number 3, right? You need to be able to continue this momentum defensively, but also be better offensively, right? You have a good Detroit defense with some quality star players there. Look, there's not Myles Garrett, but you know what? Aiden Hutchinson's pretty good, right? You have Terrion Arnold. Actually, are these guys healthy? Terrion Arnold. Arnold might not be healthy, right? I think he got injured, didn't he? Yeah, he was full the whole way through, right? He's healthy. So at this point, you have to be able to keep your momentum. And I, for one, am very excited for that Monday night game. for a multitude of different reasons. But one is because it's an opportunity to prove yourself. Because you know what some of the narrative is going to be here? You know what it's going to be? It's not my narrative, but you know what some of the narratives are going to be, maybe nationally? Is this the Browns? You did what you were supposed to do. And is that true? Sure. But this proves that the Ravens still are very talented and proves that they are still contenders. Now, you have to show up against the big contenders in games that you play against them. Because guess what? This easy, I'm saying quote unquote, easy game of the 6-game stretch to open your season, it's done now. Now, no game is easy. This one certainly wasn't. And it was, I see Game here saying it was a weird, it was a weird game. I agree with you. Explosive win, but a weird game. You now have 4 straight division winners from last season in the Lions, the Chiefs, Texans, and the Rams. 4 difficult teams to play. You need to be able to step up to the plate in those games, step up in those moments. And again, hopefully for Marlon, for Kyle Van Noy, those are guys that are going to be able to stay healthy and be on the field in week 3 against Detroit. Hopefully you get Isaiah Likely back in week 3. And if you've been listening to me in Locked On Ravens or on Locked On Ravens, you've been hearing me say that my timeline for Isaiah Likely was week 3. And again, I'm no doctor. I have no medical expertise, but I was just kind of trying to make an estimate. And I guess hopefully, we don't know yet, but hopefully I was correct in that and Likely will be able to return. Hopefully Patrick Ricard can be back as well. They certainly miss him in spots. And I see Rob asking the question, are we concerned about Henry with 2 straight games with fumbles? I mean, I'm going to say no, but if it becomes if by the end of the 2, let's just say the first 2 months of the season, if he has 4 fumbles in 2 months, then I think we have to start being concerned about it. But right now, I'm going to say no. I see Surfs here saying grab Clowney. We'll see. If that hamstring injury or something serious and has to force Van Noy to miss a couple weeks, I'd be fine with swapping out a Ajabo for Clowney on the active roster. I'd be fine with it. I think they would need another veteran there. Now, I also would like Mike Green to get more snaps. So maybe they feel good enough and I would feel good enough in Mike Green getting more snaps, right? I'd feel comfortable with that. But that's another opportunity for a guy like Mike Green to maybe take over, get in a rhythm. We saw him almost have his first NFL sack on Joe Flacco. Owe was wreaking havoc. That pass rush, want to give credit. They were really good in this game. Again, Joe just was surprisingly a lot more mobile than I thought he was going to be. I guess Joe has a little more movement to him than I thought. But yeah, I thought the pass rush was a lot better in this game. And Taurus, I've been saying this too. And I said this actually on the watch along when we were watching the game. Is that the Browns defense is a lot better than the Bills defense, right? The Browns have a very good defense. You can even call them a sneaky good defense because it's not just Myles Garrett. They have a lot of good players on that unit. And, it's just the Browns also, by the way, held that Bengals offense that's explosive to 7 yards in the second half. Total. So, it is what it is there. And yeah, I see Techie here. Pray Rasheen Ali gets well. Absolutely. He has the concussion. And I actually saw Techie. I saw you I can't find the comment now, but I saw the comment about my background. We're trying to get it set up with the background. We actually, the score thing here, if you're watching with us in video form, I have a score board thing that was supposed to show live scores. It wouldn't do it. It ended up doing it today. Although it ended up showing the Buffalo score at the end, which was very disrespectful. I did not want to be reminded of that, but we're going to get the background going. I promise. I have a plan for it. So hopefully this week we'll be able to get that rocking and rolling here. A couple of other Ravens storylines, and we'll talk about these throughout the rest of the week. Just I want to address them real quick. Jair Alexander wasn't inactive in this game, a scratch. Obviously, the messaging has been he needs to get right before he's out there again, and he did not have a designation going into the game. So I don't know what that means. I mean, they may just wanted to give him more time to get the knee fully right. This is Jair. I mean, Jair is injury prone. We know that. It's unfortunate. You hope he's out there as soon as you can get him out there. But it was a rough game in week 1. He was a main reason, not the only reason, but his execution was a big reason why the Ravens lost that game. And, they played well in the secondary without him. Does that mean they're better without him? I'd say probably no. When Jair is fully healthy and playing to his best, he is a clear asset to the defense, but he has to be able to be that player, because if he's not, then it doesn't help him. It doesn't help the Ravens. It helps nobody. Another storyline was Shedeur Sanders ended up apparently just turning down the Ravens during the draft. That was a big storyline today, national media wise, is the Ravens wanted to draft him, and Shedeur Sanders essentially said, no, I don't want to go to the Ravens because of Lamar Jackson. He wanted a better opportunity to start and compete, which I get it, but also it's the 5th round, and I think it's foolish to turn down an opportunity to go to a first-class organization where you could learn behind a great like Lamar Jackson. So just my 2 cents on that whole situation there. But we'll talk about that in more detail over the course of the rest of the week, because there are other storylines in there that certainly you want to dive into. But again, Ravens pick up a big win over the Browns, and they get in the win column. They're 1-1. They're in second place in the AFC North after the Bengals win against the Jaguars, although Joe Burrow is probably going to have to miss some time here for Cincinnati. Hopefully he's able to get well soon. But right now, the Ravens have to turn their focus. You can celebrate this one, right? Certainly, it was a dominant win, explosive win, but certainly got to turn the page to Detroit pretty quickly here. Hopefully get a better offensive performance and a continuous good defensive performance. So that's all I have for you here today on this instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens. But don't you worry, we'll be back here literally in like 20 or 30 minutes probably with the Locked On Ravens squad show. Myself, Sam Njoku, and former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail diving in to even more reaction. So be sure to stay tuned for that. And of course, we'll have our Monday episode out at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form, follow along in audio form. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.